Mummy's with the maggots now.
The Evil Dead trilogy and its remake in 2013 are some of the best horror flicks the genre has to offer, usually revolving around a haunted cabin in the woods, an evil book known as the Necronomicon, and known for having lots and lots of blood. Like a lot of blood. It launched the careers of Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, and has since spawned a television show, numerous video game adaptations, and tons of comic books. Today I'm here to talk about the latest iteration in the franchise, Evil Dead Rise. If you want to know more about the previous movies, a little while back I talked about them all in an Evil Dead retrospective. Click the link above to check out that video if you haven't already. Welcome back to the Lamphouse. Let's get groovy. Back in March 2013, when the Evil Dead remake premiered at South by Southwest, Freddy Alvarez announced the film would be getting a sequel right away. Sam Raimi also confirmed that he was planning to write and direct an Evil Dead 4 with his brother Ivan Raimi, specifying that it would indeed be a sequel to Army of Darkness, once again starring Bruce Campbell as Ash Williams. Not only that, but at a WonderCon panel that same month, Alvarez and Bruce Campbell, who was now a producer of the series, said their plan was that after Alvarez's Evil Dead 2 and Raimi's Army of Darkness 2, they would follow up with a seventh film that would merge the storylines of Ash and Mia from the remake. With the success of the remake and all these projects coming out, it seemed like a good time to be an Evil Dead fan. But by November that year, Campbell dashed any hopes for these sequels, saying that unless you hear any official announcements, nothing is going to happen.
Unless you have it's like announced from like Renaissance Pictures, it's not real.
Eventually, elements of Army of Darkness 2 became the TV show Ash vs. Evil Dead, and Fede Alvarez went on to make Don't Breathe with Jane Levy. In July 2019, Sam Raimi announced that they were working on some ideas for new Evil Dead movies and would like to include both Bruce Campbell and Fede Alvarez. But since Campbell had recently announced his retirement from the Ash Williams character, and Fede Alvarez had become a director in demand after the success of the remake, it was anyone's guess as to what could come next. In October 2019, we finally got some good news. Raimi announced at New York Comic Con that a new Evil Dead film was officially in development. Original producer Robert Tapert would produce again, with Raimi and Campbell serving as executive producers. The following June, Campbell announced that Lee Cronin would write and direct what was then called Evil Dead Now. Cronin was handpicked by Raimi after collaborating on the horror streaming series 50 States of Fright. In May 2021, New Line Cinema picked up the film for distribution, and it was scheduled for release on HBO Max. The movie's true name was also revealed, Evil Dead Rise. I'm pretty sure no one was thrilled that the latest Evil Dead movie was being released to streaming only. At least we Evil Dead fans were pissed. At the time, it seemed like everyone was doing this. Movies that were part of a long-time franchise that deserved to be released theatrically were being released solely on streaming, and it was something we just kinda had to deal with. Evil Dead Rise was to be both the fifth entry into the series, but also its own standalone story. It follows a new main character, Beth, who has just found out she's pregnant, paying an overdue visit to her older sister, Ellie, who is raising 3 kids on her own in a cramped apartment in Los Angeles. The reunion is cut short when an earthquake reveals an underground vault holding none other than the Book of the Dead. When Ellie becomes possessed shortly after and starts wreaking havoc on the family, Beth must face her fears of motherhood and step up to protect them. In May 2021, it was announced that Australian actresses Alyssa Sutherland and Lily Sullivan had been cast in the lead roles, Ellie and Beth. The following June, Gabrielle Eccles, Morgan Davies, and Nell Fisher were cast in the supporting roles of the family. Principal photography began in New Zealand on June 6, 2021. The interior sets like the parking garage, the underground bank vault, and the inside of the apartment building were all constructed in a warehouse in Mount Wellington. The opening scene with the lake and the exterior of the cabin, which was only a facade built for the movie, were all shot on location on a private property outside of Auckland. The interior was also shot at the Mount Wellington warehouse. As is to be expected with an Evil Dead movie, there's a lot of blood. Over 1,720 gallons of fake blood made of food-based dyes, high fructose corn syrup,
same stuff they use for pig's blood in Carrie,
and water were used during filming. And this movie made good use of it.
I think we used like 6,500 litres of blood in the movie, which, for the record, is like real stage blood, not like red water that was pure proper, made in an industrial kitchen movie blood. So we used a lot of that, and obviously a lot of it featured in the blood elevator.
A lot of practical effects were used over relying on CGI. The bathroom set used hydraulics to make the room shake, and the building's elevator was built in a steel frame that could be lifted, dropped, and filled with blood by being dipped in a tank by a forklift. 2 huge tanks were attached to a ramp to allow the fake blood to pour out of the elevator doors. After the special effects team ran rehearsals of the scene using stunt performers and water, the scene was shot in 2 takes, one for the wide shot and one for the close-up. The cleanup for this stunt took 8 hours, so the crew would have to clean the setup and shoot it again at the end of the day if they didn't get it right. Luckily, they got it on the first try. This bloody elevator seems familiar. Evil Dead Rise wastes no time getting to the horror with a sweet little scary intro that sets the scene with all the usual stuff. The POV shots are back, there's kids at a haunted cabin, there's the ticking clock from the first movie, there's an awesome callback to the card reading scene also from the first movie,
Jack of diamonds, Jack of clubs!
where a dead ape mockingly narrates ahead of someone reading a book.
As it spoke, I discerned, obscurely, a child's face looking through the window.
and the kids all get possessed and things get bloody. All culminating in an exciting, very chilling title card that honestly blew me away on the big screen.
Like and subscribe.
Then it's one day earlier and we meet our new main hero, Beth, who has come to Los Angeles for some advice from her sister. This is the new big thing about Evil Dead Rise. It's not set in a cabin in the woods. This time we're set in the big city. More specifically, a high-rise apartment in the city. Get it? Evil Dead Rise? Anyway, it's definitely a different vibe. This bothered a lot of hardcore fans of the series, but you get used to it. It's a cool new location that takes advantage of deadly elevators and air conditioning vents.
Mr. Fonda's kitty hides up there sometimes.
I don't think it's a cat.
And honestly, going somewhere new was probably a good idea at this point. Besides, Army of Darkness was pretty damn different from the other ones, and it's almost the best one.
Groovy.
The underground level of the apartment building with the old bank vault is basically the movie's new root cellar. Or is it fruit cellar?
Once in my fruit cellar.
In the vault protected by a multitude of crosses and charms, Danny finds, of course, the Necronomicon. This time around it goes by Notorum Demonto, and it's a new volume, devoid of a face on the cover, but this time coming complete with a nasty set of teeth on the side that needs a taste of blood to open. Harry Potter's got nothing on the Necronomicon. Danny also finds some sweet vinyl in the vault.
Books, records, films, these things matter.
Good thing he's into records and has a turntable ready to go upstairs. Danny plays the vinyl, bringing back memories of Professor Nobi's tapes from the original series. The narrator is a priest from the 1920s describing his own altercations with the Evil Dead. Even hearing what the Deadites do off-screen is unsettling.
I led them to the woodshed and set it ablaze. But they danced in its flame and reveled in its burn.
Side note here, you can hear Bruce Campbell's voice on the record, potentially as the character of Ash, telling the narrator to destroy the Necronomicon.
It's called the Book of the Dead for a reason.
As is customary, the Necronomicon comes with new artwork telling us what will inevitably happen to the characters in the movie. It's also mentioned that this one is one of, quote, 3 fabled volumes. Notorum Demonto was actually what the book was originally called in the first Evil Dead movie, as well as the remake.
It is entitled Naturam Demonto, roughly translated, Book of the Dead.
Naturam Demonto.
It started going by Necronomicon Ex Mortis after Evil Dead 2.
Necronomicon Ex Mortis, roughly translated, Book of the Dead.
Necronomicon Ex Mortis, the Book of the Dead.
So now there's 3 Necronomicons.
Hold it. Nobody said anything about 3 books.
The one from the original Evil Dead trilogy, the one from the 2013 remake, and this new one. Unless you count the decoy ones from Army of Darkness, which some people do. The director of Evil Dead Rise even said this new book could be the one that bit Ash's hand in that movie. I mean, there are so many different versions of the book in the movies and the tie-in comics that who knows how many there really are out there. I'm not complaining. After Danny plays the vinyl with the magic words, the usual things happen. Ellie gets possessed in the elevator in an homage to the lecherous vines from the previous films, and eventually, one by one, they all get taken. Another new thing in this one is that there's one Deadite who basically runs the whole show. Sure, other Evil Dead movies have had one Deadite who annoys Ash more, who seems a little more in charge, or is connected to one of the main characters, but this one seems like more of a ringleader. And man, is she fucking crazy. She's got the best lines.
Mummy's with the maggots now.
She's directly connected to the motherhood theme of the movie, and the poster for the movie is even centered around her. This is just one of the reasons I love Deadites as movie villains. Not only are they a formidable foe, they have a real nasty vocab.
Open the door like you open your legs, you stinking ruby slut!
That's my gun, you thieving cunt!
The 2 new leads are great. Alyssa Sutherland plays the new lead Deadite role with a ferocity not yet seen in this series, and Lily Sullivan is good too as her forlorn sister. They play great with the sibling turmoil carried over from the remake. Something that's also back from the remake is the brutality. There's a scene with a cheese grater that I'm sure you won't forget for a while. There may be a new location, but some familiar things happen to the characters. Instead of the bridge being out like in the originals, they're trapped by a dangerous faulty elevator and a collapsed stairwell. And of course, there's a shotgun. And a chainsaw. In fact, a lot of the same things happen in this movie in the form of callbacks to the others. Someone loses an eyeball, and then someone chokes on said eyeball. The sound of Ellie biting this guy's eye out is an audio recording of Bruce Campbell furiously biting into an apple. Cassie's homemade friend Stephanie is also an obtuse reference to the Kandarian dagger from the first 2 Evil Dead movies that has a skull for a handle. Some of the Deadites in the movie have different eye colors referencing the previous movies. While Ellie has a unique look to her eyes, Bridget's yellow eyes reference the Deadites in the remake, and Danny's pupilless white eyes reference the original ones. Director Lee Cronin also revealed that all the characters were named after actors that have previously been in other Evil Dead movies. Beth is named after Embeth Davids from Army of Darkness, Ellie is named after Ellen Sandwich from The Evil Dead, Danny is named after Dan Hicks from Evil Dead 2, Bridget is named after Bridget Fonda from Army of Darkness, Cassie is named after Cassie Wellesley DePaiva from Evil Dead 2, Teresa is named after Teresa Tilly from The Evil Dead, Jessica is named after Jessica Lucas from the Evil Dead remake. Bruce is named after, well, this one I'm not really sure of.
You want a little?
But Mr. Fonda is also named after Bridget Fonda from Army of Darkness. The guy that plays him, Mark Mitchinson, is also the voice on the Necronomicon record, and he actually played a role in Ash vs. Evil Dead as Crosby, the leader of a militia that Ash's crew crosses paths with. 2 other characters were also named Jake and Scott, which are probably a reference to Jake from Evil Dead 2 and Scotty from the original.
Party down! Yeah!
You may be asking yourself, is Sam Raimi's car in this movie? You know, the classic 1983 Oldsmobile Delta 88 he famously puts in all his movies, especially Evil Dead movies? Well, it turns out the car does not feature in this movie. I know. Disappointing. But the director said the chainsaw in the movie is the same color as the Delta, so I guess that counts. Eagle-eyed fans will also see a reference to Henrietta Noby, Professor Noby's wife from Evil Dead 2, on a pizza box near the beginning of the movie, quoting one of Ash's most memorable lines.
I'll swallow your soul!
Come get some.
Come get some.
Something that sets this Evil Dead apart from the others is its focus on motherhood. While there's always been some sexual horror,
Why don't you come down here so I can suck your cock, pretty boy?
Mia.
This movie is more about pregnancy body horror. Early on in the movie, Beth finds out she is pregnant and she's shaken by the news. She takes it as something she is at fault for, and her initial reaction is that this is bad news for her and her career. The movie goes about this theme of motherhood in the most Evil Dead way possible, leaving us all frightened and a little more than uncomfortable.
2 souls?
She is quickly forced to protect her nieces and nephew from Ellie, who has become possessed by Kandarian demons. When Ellie first goes bad, Beth is just as scared as the kids in the movie are. And why shouldn't she be?
All I could think about was how much I wanted to cut you all open and climb inside your body so that we could stay one happy family.
Beth is just like the children at this point. She looks to her sister as more of the adult between the two of them, more of a mother figure. As we know, mothers are usually associated with safety, solace, and can be a form of guidance for some. When Ellie is possessed, this all gets turned upside down.
I knew we needed a really great big bad in the story. And that was the kind of idea of taking the mother, maybe the obviously most secure person within the story, and then subverting her, and subverting her behavior.
Ellie in her Deadite form is the antithesis of all those motherly themes. She's a deceptive, treacherous, manipulative, evil demon who wants these kids dead. Before Ellie's corpse is completely taken over by possession, she confesses that she is terrified to face her nieces and nephew now that their mother is dead.
I don't know what to do, Al. You're the one who always has the answers. I'm too scared to even face your kids right now.
Once Ellie is reanimated as a Deadite and goes really bad, it's up to Beth to take care of the kids. She does her absolute best, rising to the occasion and putting herself in harm's way for them. In her struggles, she does lose Danny and Bridget, but she reaches a turning point when it comes to protecting Cassie.
You'd be a good mom someday, honey Beth.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you know how to lie to kids.
Through this little bit of bleak humor, Beth now understands her role. She may have come to LA looking for guidance from her sister, but through her struggles she finds a side of herself she didn't know was there. Through saving Cassie, she finds her inner maternal instinct. Beth must take on the Deadites, just like Ash and Mia have in the past, but this time this protagonist must fight for someone else. Now she's the one guiding her niece to safety, and maybe motherhood won't be so bad after all.
Are you gonna be a mom?
Yes.
Evil Dead is a horror franchise, first and foremost, and the horror continues to great effect in this chapter. But it's cool to see some underlying concepts sneaking their way into the franchise, simple as they may be.
I gotta kill the creepy crawlies that I got inside my tummy. I don't like having things inside my tummy.
I will say the movie suffers a bit from character development. We don't get to know these characters very well, especially the neighbor characters, who seem to mostly exist as fodder for the Deadites, which is actually fine with me.
Dead by dawn! Dead by dawn! Dead by dawn! Dead by dawn! Dead by dawn!
We get the basics that we need from the main cast. They're a semi-dysfunctional family that annoys each other and mostly gets along, but it's not quite enough. You might ask, why am I looking for character development in what is technically Evil Dead 5? But these things matter if we're going to care about them inevitably dying later on in the movie. And it really matters because that's what makes these types of movies scary. I'll give you that most horror movies like Friday the 13th, for instance, that have over 10 installments, don't really need character development. We don't really care about these people. In fact, we're usually seeing those movies for the opposite reason, to actually see them die. But Evil Dead is different. It's not a typical mindless slasher. It's a special horror series with a long-time cult following. We barely knew anything about the crew in the remake, but the little details that let us know who they are helped us care about and be scared for them when the shit starts to hit the fan. The more you identify with them, the scarier the situation is, and the less you want to be in their shoes. I gotta add, one of the best parts of the movie is the monster at the end. Ellie gets dismembered by shotguns, so she fuses with the other Deadites to become one new monster, known as the Marauder. It sort of reminds me of the Kandarian demon at the end of Evil Dead 2, known lovingly as the Rotten Applehead. How it's an amalgamation of every other character in the movie that taunts the main character.
You know, you really do look like Mom, and you're gonna fail miserably just like her.
Overall, Evil Dead Rise is not the best Evil Dead movie, but it's pretty fucking rad. It definitely doesn't rely on location nostalgia the way the other Evil Dead movies do, but the new location is a bonus. It adds nuance and an urban horror layer that we haven't seen in this series till now. And like I said, you can't do the same thing every time. It gets the job done, and does a damn good job of it with spectacular makeup, interesting camera work, and practical special effects.
Told you should have put the book back, Danny!
Filming for Evil Dead Rise officially wrapped October 27, 2021, and after 6 months of editing was set to release theatrically by Warner Bros. On April 21, 2023, after its world premiere at South by Southwest on March 15, 2023. That's right. After positive test screenings and Warner Bros. Restructuring their distribution plans by relying less on HBO Max only releases and more on theatrical releases, we Evil Dead fans were getting our wish. And good thing too. It would have been so wrong to see this movie on a small screen for the first time. The movie was released up against The Covenant, Chevalier, and the wide release of Beau is Afraid. It made $25.5 million on its first weekend, finishing second after the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which was still continuing its reign over the box office. It eventually grossed $67.2 million in the US and Canada, and $79.8 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $147 million, on a budget of $15 to $19 million. The critics even liked this movie, giving it mostly good reviews, stating it offered just about everything longtime fans could hope for while managing to carry the franchise forward. And that's Evil Dead Rise. Director Lee Cronin has suggested that he has ideas of where else the story could go, so the apartment building might just be the beginning of new locations for the Deadites to terrorize. Bruce Campbell stated in April 2023 that he and Sam and Ivan Raimi were planning for future Evil Dead films every 2 or 3 years if Rise was a success, instead of waiting so long between movies. After all, it had been 10 years since the Evil Dead remake. He went on to say that Sam and Ivan Raimi had been working on a sort of Evil Dead Bible to give to future writers and directors of the series to help give an idea of where to go next to tie the stories together. So get ready for some intricate Evil Dead stories that tie together as the years go by. In February 2024, it was reported that Sebastian Vanacek has been selected to write and direct a new movie. And in April 2024, another film was announced to be written and directed by Francisca Lupi. So it looks like they're making good on their promise of more Evil Dead. We might have lost the Haunted Cabin, but if the series caliber stays as good as Evil Dead 2013 and Evil Dead Rise, then I say bring it on. As long as it's got evil books wrapped in flesh, gratuitous amounts of blood, and awesome applications of power tools.